Sam Elliott has always been Hollywood's last real cowboy. That gravelly voice, the weathered stare, and a career built on playing men of grit and principle. For decades, he kept his cool, rarely speaking out, rarely breaking the silence that made him a legend. But now, at 80 years old, Elliott has finally decided to drop the cowboy calm and speak his mind. And what he revealed shocked Hollywood. Behind the scenes, there are 7 actors and even 1 director that he simply could not stand. Some he called too polished. Others he accused of chasing fame instead of truth. And a few he believed betrayed the very soul of the American West. So, who made Sam Elliott's blacklist? And why did one of the most respected men in Hollywood finally decide to expose them? Stick around, because the names and the reasons are rougher than a desert standoff. Let's dive in. When Sam Elliott finally broke his silence, the first name out of his mouth set Hollywood on fire: Benedict Cumberbatch. Back in 2021, Cumberbatch starred in The Power of the Dog, a film that critics hailed as a masterpiece. But for Elliott, it wasn't just another Western, it was a betrayal. Appearing on a podcast, he tore into the movie with the kind of bluntness only he could deliver. He mocked the film's slow pace, its art house direction, and then zeroed in on Cumberbatch himself. Elliott ridiculed the British actor's posture, his polished delivery, even his accent. To him, Cumberbatch wasn't playing a cowboy, he was pretending to be one. And Sam Elliott doesn't forgive pretending. "What the hell does this Brit know about the American West?" he growled, his voice carrying the weight of a lifetime spent defending cowboy culture. The backlash was instant. Critics accused Elliott of gatekeeping, of clinging to old-school masculinity that modern cinema was trying to redefine. But Elliott didn't back down. He didn't apologize. He doubled down, saying the film misunderstood everything about the West: the silence, the grit, the unspoken rules of survival. For Elliott, authenticity isn't negotiable. You can't learn it in a training camp. You can't fake it with costumes or props. It's either in your blood or it isn't. And in his eyes, no matter how many awards Benedict Cumberbatch collected, he would never understand the reality of the West. And that was just the beginning. Because while Cumberbatch's style was too foreign for Elliott, the next actor on his list was someone closer to home. Someone Elliott worked with directly, but never truly respected. After calling out Benedict Cumberbatch for being an outsider, Sam Elliott turned his attention to someone much closer to home: Ashton Kutcher. On paper, the pairing sounded unlikely but promising. The grizzled Hollywood veteran teaming up with the young, charismatic sitcom star for Netflix's The Ranch. But while cameras rolled smoothly, behind the scenes Elliott wasn't impressed. Crew members recalled his quiet sighs, his subtle head shakes, and the way his words cut sharper than any public rant. One line in particular summed it up: "He's a decent guy, but no real actor." That wasn't meant as an insult to Kutcher's character. By all accounts, Elliott found him polite and hard-working. But to him, Kutcher represented everything wrong with modern Hollywood, an industry that rewards charm, good looks, and social media appeal over authenticity and depth. While Elliott had spent decades clawing his way up with small roles, lived in grit, and slow-earned respect, Kutcher rocketed to fame through sitcom punchlines, paparazzi headlines, and tech ventures. To the old cowboy, it felt hollow. He once quipped privately, "He's acting like a guy who learned acting on YouTube." Kutcher himself never fired back. In fact, he often praised Elliott as a mentor. But Elliott wasn't swayed. For him, acting is sacred ground. You don't just play the part, you carry the weight of it in your bones. And no amount of charm could convince him that Kutcher had that depth. Still, Elliott never made it personal. He remained professional, delivered his lines, and never tried to overshadow his co-star. But his quiet judgment lingered. To him, Ashton Kutcher wasn't a rival. He was a symbol, proof that Hollywood had started valuing surface over substance. And if Kutcher represented a light, surface-level version of acting, the next man on Elliott's list was the opposite. An actor who took things so far, it crossed into what Elliott saw as pure circus: Jared Leto. If Ashton Kutcher frustrated Sam Elliott for being too shallow, Jared Leto annoyed him for the exact opposite reason: being too much. By now, Hollywood is used to Leto's wild method acting, sending rats to his co-stars on Suicide Squad, refusing to break character even off-set, or going to extreme physical transformations just to prove his dedication. To many, it's eccentric genius. But to Sam Elliott, it was nothing more than a carnival act. Friends close to Elliot say he once muttered, "He's acting like acting is a sideshow." To him, the job of an actor isn't about shocking headlines or bizarre stunts. It's about truth, subtle, lived-in, quiet truth. You don't need to terrorize your co-stars or carry a character home with you. You just need to understand the story and disappear into it. Elliot respected discipline. He respected restraint. To him, the best acting whispers, it doesn't scream. And Leto, with all his theatrics, was the opposite. A man who wanted the spotlight more than the role. The clash wasn't just philosophical. Insiders revealed Elliot once walked away from a film when he heard Leto had been cast. No public statement, no scandal. He just quietly stepped aside. That silence said more than words ever could. To Elliot, sharing the screen with someone who turned acting into spectacle was never an option. Where Kutcher was surface and easygoing, Leto was a showman who pushed too far, and for Elliot, both missed the same mark: authenticity. But Elliot's frustrations weren't always about gimmicks or shallow performances. Sometimes, the disappointment cut deeper. The next name wasn't just another actor, it was someone Elliot once called a brother: Jeff Bridges. Not every name on Sam Elliott's list comes with anger or disgust. Some come with silence, and for him, silence can be even louder. That's what happened with Jeff Bridges. For years, the two men seemed inseparable, cut from the same rugged cloth. Both carried that quiet weight on screen. Both embodied authenticity, and when they appeared together in The Big Lebowski, their chemistry was undeniable. Elliott's deep, deliberate cadence balanced perfectly with Bridges' laid-back, effortless charm. Off-screen, too, they shared a bond that felt genuine, almost brotherly. But something shifted after Bridges won the Oscar for Crazy Heart in 2010. Friends of Elliot noticed the change before he ever spoke about it. Bridges became harder to reach, more polished, more aware of his Hollywood stature. Where Elliot lived by simplicity and humility, Bridges seemed to drift into the very circles they once resisted together. Elliot never called him out directly, but he didn't need to. In one interview, he dropped a line that fans couldn't ignore. "Some folks change. Others just show who they always were." Many saw it as a veiled reflection on Bridges. Not cruel, not bitter, just disappointed. The distance grew quietly. No more joint appearances, no more public praise, no premieres attended side by side. They didn't feud, they didn't fight, they just drifted. And for Elliot, that was the kind of loss that stung the most. Not betrayal, but evolution. The painful realization that someone he once considered a kindred spirit was no longer walking the same path. It wasn't anger that drove the silence. It was grief. For a man like Sam Elliott, who guards loyalty as fiercely as he guards authenticity, losing Jeff Bridges wasn't a feud. It was a wound that never healed. And while Bridges represented the pain of drift, the next actor on Elliott's list dragged him back into frustration, this time with a style of acting that, in Elliott's eyes, was pure chaos. Nicolas Cage. If Jeff Bridges represented a slow, painful drift, Nicolas Cage was the exact opposite: pure, explosive chaos. For Sam Elliott, great acting is like a quiet storm. A single pause can reveal more than an entire monologue. A glance can carry the weight of a lifetime. It's subtle, controlled, and built on discipline. But Nicolas Cage? He was the storm unleashed. From his wide-eyed bursts of energy to his unpredictable, almost manic choices, Cage carved out a career defined by risk-taking. Audiences loved it. Directors praised it. Awards followed. But Elliot wasn't impressed. To him, Cage wasn't crafting truth. He was chasing spectacle. They worked together once in Ghost Rider. On camera, they delivered their roles. Off camera, there was distance. Elliot stayed polite, professional, but he never connected. Later, he would speak broadly about actors who hijack scenes with ego, those who bend the story to their own expression instead of serving the character. Friends say everyone knew exactly who he was talking about. "More firework than flame," he reportedly said of Cage. To Elliot, that line said everything. Where he valued presence and silence, Cage erupted in ways that felt hollow. To him, the art was being drowned out by noise. It wasn't rivalry. It wasn't jealousy. Elliot never wanted Cage's spotlight. What he wanted was integrity, a kind of stillness that forces the audience to lean in. And Cage, with his operatic gestures and wild flourishes, broke that rule every time. For Elliot, Nicolas Cage wasn't an evolution of acting. He was erosion. proof that Hollywood was slipping further away from the kind of craft Elliot had spent his life defending. And if actors like Cage tested Elliot's patience, things reached an even bigger boiling point when he clashed with a director, a filmmaker who fired back at him in front of the entire industry. Jane Campion. Sam Elliott's blunt critique of the power of the dog didn't just target Benedict Cumberbatch. It also ignited a firestorm with the person behind the camera, director Jane Campion. Elliot had dismissed the film in the harshest terms, mocking its portrayal of the American West and scoffing at the idea that a filmmaker from New Zealand could capture cowboy culture. To him, the power of the dog wasn't authenticity. It was an outsider's interpretation, a stylish facade that had nothing to do with the grit, silence, and unspoken codes he believed defined the West. Campion wasn't about to let that slide. At the Directors Guild of America Awards, standing on stage with the industry watching, she fired back with a line as sharp as any Elliot had delivered on screen. "He's not a cowboy, he's an actor." Her words hit like a shot across the desert. It wasn't just a rebuttal, it was a public challenge to everything Elliot built his legacy on. Fans and critics immediately framed it as a battle between old Hollywood values and a new wave of storytelling, between Elliott's guarded code of masculinity and Campion's exploration of repression, vulnerability, and change. Campion went even further, suggesting Elliott's critique carried shades of sexism, that he was uncomfortable with a woman reimagining the Western, a genre historically dominated by men. For her, it wasn't about authenticity, it was about breaking boundaries. Elliot didn't respond publicly. No apology, no counterattack, just silence. But those close to him say he wasn't moved. He stood firm in his belief that the power of the dog had betrayed the West, no matter how many awards it collected or how loudly Campion defended it. It was proof that Elliott's fights weren't just with actors he saw as shallow or theatrical. He was willing to challenge directors too, even the most celebrated, if he felt they broke the unspoken code of the cowboy. And that brings us to the final name on his list. A man many call the modern face of Westerns, a man Sam Elliott dismissed not with anger but with ice-cold disdain. Kevin Costner. For Sam Elliott, the Western isn't just a genre, it's a philosophy. It's silence, grit, and authenticity forged by the land itself, and that's exactly why his feelings about Kevin Costner cut so deep. Costner has built an empire around modern Westerns. From Wyatt Earp to Yellowstone, he's become, for many fans, the face of frontier storytelling in the 21st century. But for Elliot, it all rang hollow. The boots were clean, the cattle too quiet, and the drama too polished. Costner's performances looked more like glossy magazine spreads than the rugged reality Elliot believed the West demanded. Insiders claim Elliot once scoffed in private, saying Costner plays a rancher like it's dress-up. To him, Yellowstone, despite its massive success and millions of viewers, was nothing more than a soap opera with a cowboy hat. The sweeping vistas and family feuds might have drawn audiences in, but Elliot saw it as Hollywood at its most manufactured. In fact, producers reportedly offered Elliot a cameo role in Yellowstone. It could have been a powerful nod to his status as a Western icon. But he turned it down flat. Accepting the role he felt would have been a betrayal, not just to himself, but to the authenticity he'd defended his entire life. The chill between the two stars was never loud, never explosive, but it was unmistakable. They never yelled, one producer said, but the silence between them could freeze a desert. For Elliot, it wasn't personal, it was principle. He wasn't rejecting Kevin Costner as a man, he was rejecting a version of the West that he simply didn't recognize, glossy, curated, and stripped of the harsh truths he believed defined the cowboy way of life. And with that, Sam Elliott's list came full circle. From foreign outsiders to Hollywood showmen, from close friends lost to industry feuds, each name revealed not just who he clashed with, but what he stood for. Looking at the names on Sam Elliott's list, one thing becomes crystal clear: this was never just about actors or directors, it was about values. To Elliot, the cowboy isn't a costume. It isn't a role you can slip into with clean boots, fancy accents, or headline-grabbing stunts. It's a way of life, rooted in silence, grit, and authenticity. Anyone who betrayed that, whether through shallow performances, chaotic theatrics, or glossy soap opera storytelling, found themselves on the wrong side of his respect. Some stars were too polished, others were too wild, and a few, like Jeff Bridges, simply drifted away. But in every case, Elliott's response wasn't about ego, it was about principle. Even at 80 years old, he refuses to bend for Hollywood trends, guarding the cowboy code like the last sentinel on the frontier. But here's the real question. Is Sam Elliott preserving a tradition worth protecting, or is he refusing to evolve with a changing world? One thing's for sure. Whether you agree with him or not, his voice still cuts through Hollywood like desert thunder. So now we want to hear from you. Do you think Sam Elliott is right to call out these actors? Or has the cowboy legend become stuck in the past? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed uncovering this side of Hollywood, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and subscribe for more untold stories from behind the screen. Because in Hollywood, there's always more to the story than what you see on camera.